Hello everybody. In this Python tutorial we're going to go over if statements. We have several examples, so let's get right into it. For our first example, we're just going to use a very simple if statement and only the if part. So here we have a variable and we have a color assigned to that variable, and we want to say if favorite color equals green, display a message that says green is a nice color. Okay, so if we select this and run it, you can see we get our green is a nice color message displayed over here in the IPython console. Now if you change this variable here to a different color, and then you try and print this, nothing's going to display. And that's what we would expect. Next, let's go over an example using if else. And we want to say if the temperature is less than or equal to 32 degrees, display a message that says freezing. Otherwise, display a message that says above freezing. So here we go. If temperature is less than or equal to 32 degrees, display a message that says freezing. And then we can put in our else. You can just think of that as otherwise. Display a message that says above freezing. So now let's go up here and select our code and run it. And we get above freezing. Now if we change this temperature to 31, now the message should display freezing. And it does. Good to go. Next up, let's use an example that uses if, else if, and else. And in this example, we want to display a message that says something about the time it will take to go around a track depending on how you travel around the track, either walking, running, or biking. So here we have our exercise variable, and in this case we have it set to bike. So now let's create our if statement that says if exercise is equal to walk, display a message that says slow, and then the syntax for else if is elif. So let's type in else if, elif, exercise is equal to run, display a message that says medium, then we're going to put in another else if. Again, you can use that same syntax, elif, exercise equals bike, display a message that says fast. And then finally we're going to use a catch-all else, where if the variable or the input does not equal walk, run, or bike, then we'll just display a message that says other. Now let's select this and run it and see what we get. So we get fast, and that is what we would expect because we have the exercise currently set to bike. Now let's set it to walk. Select this and run it, and you can see we get slow now. And that is correct because that's what we wanted to display if the exercise equals walk. And let's just do one more and say other. And of course, when we run this, it should display other. And it does. Next, let's show an example using an if statement and the or statement. So in this example, what we want to do is create some code that asks a trivia question. So let's put in a print here that asks the question, name one of the moons of Mars. Okay, so here we have our current guess or answer to the trivia question. Now we want to create the if statement, and we'll say if Mars moon equals the answers, which are Phobos and Deimos. Not exactly sure if I'm pronouncing those correctly, but those are the two moons of Mars. So let's put in Phobos, or Mars moon equals Deimos or Deimos, or Deimos, however you want to say that. And then we want to display a message if one of those two are guessed or used for the answer that says correct. Else, we'll display a message that says sorry, not correct. Okay, so let's select this code and run it. And we get sorry, not correct. And that's because we have an incorrect answer in here currently. The answer, or the guess, was Titan, which is actually a moon of Saturn. So let's put a correct answer in here, and let's put in Phobos. Select this and run it. And now we get the correct display message. Next up, let's go over an example of using the if statement with the and. So let's just pretend that we're going to the vet to have a checkup for our dog. And when we put the dog on the scale, it's going to output a message that tells us if our dog needs to gain weight or lose weight. Okay, so the code for that would look something like this. We'll say if dog's weight is greater than or equal to 70 and dog's weight is less than or equal to 100, display a message that says ideal weight. Next, we use an else if, elif, dog's weight is less than 70, display a message that says your dog needs to gain weight. And then we could use a catch-all else that says otherwise, display a message that says your dog needs to lose weight. And you could probably put another else if statement here and define the parameters that says else if dog's weight is greater than 100. However, in this case, we don't really need to do that because we already have our parameters set here in the if and the else if. And if they don't meet that criteria, the else will take care of it if the dog is over 100 pounds and tell us that the dog needs to lose weight. Okay? So let's select this and run it. And currently, we have the dog's weight at 77, and that is between 70 and 100, and we get the correct output message. Now let's change this to, say, 50. And in this case, it should say your dog needs to gain weight. And that's what we get. Your dog needs to gain weight. Now let's change this to 150. And now the output should be your dog needs to lose weight. So let's run it again. And the message says your dog needs to lose weight. That's good. Now let's change this back one more time to something kind of in the middle. Run it one more time, and now we're back at ideal weight. And a couple more things before we move on to the next example. just a reminder that when you use the OR statement, you just need one of the criteria to be true for the outcome to be true, or in this case, correct. So for this Mars moon, you could put Phobos or Deimos, however you say that, to get the display message correct. And that differs from the AND because the AND requires that both or all criteria be true. So in this case, there's a couple ways you can think of this. You could think of this as the dog's weight needs to be between 70 and 100 to be ideal weight, give or take. Or you can think of it as the dog's weight needs to be greater than or equal to 70 and these both need to be true, and less than or equal to 100 to get the ideal weight output display message. Okay, so those are just a couple reminders on the difference between OR and AND. And also, let's show you that if you wanted to put an else if here and be explicit and say dog's weight greater than 100, this should work the same as just using the else. And let's show you. So let's put in a really large number here, 188-pound dog. And since we said else if dog's weight is greater than 100, your dog needs to lose weight. This should work the same as the way we had it before with just the else, and it does. Your dog needs to lose weight. However, this isn't really needed in this case because just by using the if in this criteria and then the else if in this criteria and then this else as a sort of catch-all, we meet all criteria. And this should work, as we showed you earlier, to display the correct message no matter what number you have for the dog's weight. Okay? Next up, let's go over an example using the if statement and the in. And in this case, we're going to test for a substring. Let's type if pepper in red pepper. We want to display a message that says, yes, that is a type of pepper. Otherwise, or else, display a message that says not a pepper. Select it and run it, and it says, yes, that is a pepper because pepper is in red pepper. Now, if we change this to something like cabbage, select it and run it, now we get not a pepper. Now let's go over an example using an if statement inside a for loop. And we haven't covered lists or for loops yet in our basic tutorial series. And if this code that we're about to go over doesn't make perfect sense to you, that's fine because we're going to go over lists and loops in more detail in future tutorials. So let's create a for loop to iterate through these lists. We say for spots in vacation spots. Then we need another for loop to iterate through the details of these lists. We'll say for details in spots. Now we're going to use our if statement. If ocean is in the details, so if ocean is in any of these details here, in any of these lists, print the 0 index of each list with the name of the vacation spot. And we just have those generically named right now, vacation spot 1, 2, and so on. And to do that, we just print spots, 0 index, which will give us the name. So let's select this code. And before we run it, let's just kind of get an idea of what should be returned. Now, if we had a really long list, this code would be much more useful. But in this case, we can just kind of eyeball it and see what's going on. The vacation spots with oceans are vacation spot 1 and vacation spot 4. So this code should return those names, vacation spot 1 and vacation spot 4. So let's run it. And that's what we get. Okay, so that is it for this tutorial on if statements. We will be doing many more Python tutorials in the near future. Please join us for those, and we'll see you next time.